this is Katie with craftingwithkatie.com, and today I'm going to be making a video using Cricut Design Space. I made a card a couple of weeks ago. I just got my Cricut Explorer, and I made a card using the welding feature, and somebody asked how I did it, so I thought I'd make a video. So the first thing I'm going to do is set a canvas, which is a nice way to have a little template to help you just figure out the size of what you're doing. So I'm going to be making a rectangular card, so I'm going to choose the rectangular card base here. So I'm selecting it, I'm going to click Done. And then I don't want the vertical orientation, so if I go over here, I can change that to horizontal. And hit Update Canvas. Now this is making a 5.5 by 4.25 inch card. So the next thing I need to do is select some borders and a rectangle for my card base. This will not actually cut, it's just there to help you figure out the size of your card. So I'm going to go to Insert Images, and I want it to just show the images that I already own. So for my border, I know which cartridge it's from. So I'm going to go to My Image Sets and type in Elegant Edges. I'll just go ahead and open that. And this is a nice cartridge for all sorts of borders. So there's a certain one I have in mind here, which is this one. So I'm going to choose that, and you can see it shows up down here on the bottom. So I'm going to click back, and then I'm going to go to my images so I can search for a rectangle, because I'll need that for the card base as well. So any rectangle will do. I'm sure you have them on some cartridge that you own. I'm just going to scroll through here, and here's a nice plain one. This is from the Don Juan cartridge, so I'll be using that. And then since this is a thank you note for a tea, I'm going to also look for a teacup. So I'm going to just search for tea. And you can see there's a lot of print and cut ones because I own an Imagine, so I have all of those cartridges. But I actually don't want to do one of those. I think I'm going to use this one here from Love You a Latte. So I have all three cut files that I need showing up right here, so I can insert them all at once. And I'll just put the teacup aside for now, the rectangle, and wow, look at that border. It came out quite large. Now for the border, I actually do not want this one with the flourishes. I just want a really simple border. So if you look here for the layers, it'll show you all of the different shapes that you're working with. And I'm going to focus right now on the flourish border. So since I just want what's behind it, the shadow, I'm going to hide the flourish border, and now I'm left with the shadow. So if I click on Edit, I can change the size of this. So since my card is 5.5 inches, I'm just going to change the width to 5.5. Hit Enter, and now it's just the right size. So I'm going to be wanting one of these up at the top edge of the card. So I'm going to just put it there for now. And I'm going to just try to line it up really nicely with the... Sometimes you can use your arrow key, but you don't have as much control. So I'm also using the mouse to get it just lined up. Okay, now I'm also going to need one at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is copy it, and then I'm going to paste it. But for the one at the bottom, I need it facing down instead of up, so that's not a problem. If I just go to the Edit, there's a Mirror Vertical button right here. So I'm going to click on that, and it'll flip it for me. So now I can put this down at the bottom. Okay, now I want to make sure that these are lined up perfectly. So if I click on this, and I look on the Edit, the nice thing here is the X coordinates, that's just how far across it is. It lets me know it's at 1.54 inches. So I'm going to make sure that the bottom one is also at 1.54, and you can see it's not. It's a little bit off. It's 1.56. So I'm going to change that to 1.54 and get it lined up just right. Okay, so that one's set. Now we can work on our rectangle. So the rectangle, I'm going to adjust the height manually, but I'm going to unlock it so I can make the width be the width of my card, which again is 5.5 inches. And if I line this up at the top of the border, overlapping just a little bit because I'm going to need to weld it together. And again, if I check my X coordinate, it's not quite lined up. It's at 1.53, so I'm going to change that to 1.54 inches. And now, if I click the height arrow button to increase the height, what it's going to do is it's going to drag this down, and I can do that until it reaches that bottom one. I'm just going to click that. I can also come over here and pull it. So those are two ways you can increase it easily. So I'm going to, again, overlap it just a teeny bit. If I overlap it too much, I'm going to lose the roundness of the edges there. Okay, so that looks great. Now to weld them together is really easy. Just click on one of the borders, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, click the rectangle and the other border so they're all selected. And if you right click on the whole thing, you can click Weld. And now you've got your card base. And if you go to Edit, you can see, click on it again, the width of this card base is 5.5 inches and the height is 8.48 inches. So that's pretty darn close to 8.5 inches, which is totally fine with me. So now the last thing I have to do is just adjust the size of my teacup. Now notice my teacup is disappearing as I bring it through here. All I need to do now is just right click on it and go to Move to Front. Now it's in front. Okay, so you can see here really faintly there's a little dotted line showing me where the score marks are. So that's the middle of your card. And if you wanted to, there's actually, if you go to Insert Images and type Score, I'll show you real quick. I'm not going to do this because I think it's easier just to score it yourself with your scoreboard. But you could add score lines. See right here, there's a free score line. So you could insert that, and you could turn that, and you could add a score line right on your project here, which is kind of cool. But I'm actually not going to do that. Since this is a 8.5 inch card, I find it just as easy to do it on my score pal. But it is a neat feature when you're doing something that is not so easy to score. Okay, so here is my teacup. So I'll probably make it about this big. I know that I'm going to be adding a sentiment from my creative time, and I'm going to be adding probably one of the MS Stitch rectangle frame dies as well. So this is probably a nice size. So when I go to cut, you can see it's going to break that into layers. You can see the 4 layers for the teacup. And then it'll have my big card base here. So I'll go ahead and cut these and then we'll put this card together. So the base cut out perfectly, and I'm just going ahead and scoring it at 4¼ inches with my score pal. And then to add a cream layer, I'm going to use one of these My Creative Time stitched rectangular dies. I'm going to use the larger one, but because it's a little bit taller than I'd like, I'm going to run it through the Vagabond twice just to take a little bit of the height off. So I ran it through once, and you can see it's just going to be a little bit too tall here. But if I run it through a second time, I can cut off a little bit of that top part. So the main thing when you do this is you just want to be sure that you're lining up the stitching with the die, with the stitching that's on the piece that you already cut, because otherwise you're going to get double stitching and that's not going to look very nice. So after lining it all up, I just ran it through the Vagabond again. So now that it's gone through a second time, it's just the right size to be a layer on my card. I've gone ahead and assembled the teacup. For the sentiment, I'm using My Creative Times All You Need Is Coffee stamp set. This is a really cute little stamp set. It's got all sorts of images of coffee cups and little designs you can stamp on them. And then it's got ways that you can spell out sentiments for coffee or tea. And I'm using 3 different stamps that spell out happiness is a cup of tea shared with a friend. And when I stamp this, I'm going to keep it a little bit towards the right side of the card so that I can tie some twine on the left side. Now if you notice on the teacup on the tag, I stamped thank you. Now for that one, I used an old paper tray ink set. I was looking for the tiniest little thank you stamp that I had, and I found it on Paper Tray Ink's Tiny Tags stamp set. That was the only one I could find that would fit on there. The ink I'm using is Hero Arts Hero Hues in black, which I just started using and I really like it. It stamps really nicely. So now I'm just adding some Paper Tray Ink Rustic Jute Twine just to give this a little extra touch. And I'm tying it on the side where I left that little extra space from the sentiment. And I'm giving it a little bow. Not my expertise. For some reason when I tie bows, I have to tie them upside down. I don't know why, it's very odd. So, and then my bow came out a little bit loose. So what I did was I put a little piece of Scotch tape on the back just to keep the twine a little bit tighter on the front. And then I just glued down my teacup with some Scotch Quick Dry. It's one of my favorite adhesives. This is where I tape down the back of the twine. I just kind of crisscross them to make them tight and put a little Scotch tape there. And then to adhere this to my card base, I just use my ATG. I still use that for big things on, like adhering the big layers down. And then that is about it for the card. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching.